Reading from I'll Build You a Temple, a chapter entitled Facing Challenges. The next day, Prabhupada left Juhu for Vrindavan and Delhi, where he spoke about the value of endeavoring to build a temple. In England, quote, "In England, the castles are there, very old castles, 1,000 years, 2,000 years. Even this Westminster Abbey and palace. But which king has lived there permanently? And now if the king has, by his work, become something else, not necessarily he'll become a king in that house. He may become a dog there. The science they do not know. And they are proud of their education, culture. Suppose you have constructed this Vrindavan temple or Bombay temple. It is also certain that we shall not live, but our attempt to construct the temple will be recorded with Krishna, because he has spent his energy for my service. That will be our gain. That will not go in vain." 2 months later in Los Angeles, he spoke about his settling with Ratna. This Ratna, first of all, proposed 20,000 to sell that house. Then when I went there, he knew that I was settling at any cost. He said 20,000 was proposed formally. Now things have gone very high. I cannot sell. So he knew that we were eager to purchase. Then I said, "Then what to do?" "Well, then what do you want to do?" "Now I want 30,000. "All right, yes, take it." I did not argue. In this way, I settled up, and our Giriraj's father appreciated that it is better a bad settlement than prolong the case. So I took this policy. At Shiv Nair, I'd been suffering from jaundice. With care and patience, I had been able to overcome my condition. But within 2 weeks after Prabhupada had shifted from Bhogilal Patel's mansion to Mr. Sethi's place in the Juhu scheme, I had a relapse. And no matter what I did, I had not been able to recover. So what happened was, in India, there's a hepatitis virus. And that virus comes from fecal matter. But everyone gets the disease when, at least used to be, everyone gets the disease when they're a baby. So they have one bout of diarrhea as a baby, and they become immune. But for Westerners who were never associated with that virus, that hepatitis virus, they used to come to India, and especially the West males that were around 22 years old, 23 years old, they were susceptible to that virus. So all these foreign devotees that came here to serve, like Giriraj Swami and others, they used to get sick from the hepatitis virus. And it was very debilitating, because you lose all your energy, all your strength, your skin turns yellow, your eyes turn yellow, and the only thing you can digest is Live 52 and Mishri. That's all. So this hit at practically every Western devotee, especially males, that came here, including me. In 1978, just before this temple opened, I was traveling actually in UP, and we were distributing sets of books in the libraries, and then we were coming here for the opening of the Juhu temple, Makar Sankranti 1978. But I became very sick. I didn't know what it was, but I was on my back. And one devotee told me, look, everybody's busy, and opening time, nobody's there to take care of you. Better you go to the hospital. He said, that's what I did. So literally, I crawled over to the Bharatiya Arogya Hospital over here. And then I told them my problem. They had one look at me, and then they tested my urine sample, and they said, oh my God, you have infectious hepatitis. So I was when the opening happened, I was in the hospital in Bharatiya Arogya. But this is the, and there was this sadhu in Vrindavan. I didn't have experience, but other devotees, they had experience. If they got hepatitis, you would go to the sadhu in Vrindavan, and he had a peacock feather. And if he touched you with the peacock feather, you would get cured from the virus. It didn't happen to me, but I spoke to other devotees that went to that sadhu and they had hepatitis, and he touched them with a peacock feather, they got better. But otherwise, it takes about 2 years to recover from hepatitis. Because like Girat Swami was saying, it relapse. You might feel a little bit better, then you eat one pakora, and you're on your back. Such a disease. But most of the devotees that came to India in those days, now not so much. Nowadays, maybe there's better cleanliness, bottled water. There was no bottled water in those days. Just had to drink whatever water was available. Otherwise, you drink limkas. And that could get expensive. At the 1974 Mayapur festival in Mayapur, that was the first festival that they had where the international devotees came. About 300-400 devotees from around the world came to Mayapur. And at that time in Mayapur, there was nothing. If you wanted to buy a pack of matches, you had to go to Navadvip, take a boat and go to Navadvip to buy a pack of matches. Nothing. So devotees were there for the festival. And again, there was only water available was from the hand pump. Everybody got sick. Everybody got sick. And they had diarrhea. Tremendous. I can remember I was so sick that I just moved my sleeping bag close to the bathroom so I didn't have so far to walk. But fortunately, I felt a little better on Gaur Purnima Day, and I could go down and get initiated. But I had one friend, he was so sick, he couldn't even make it downstairs to the temple to attend the initiation ceremony. So he got initiated later. But in those days, the conditions were very difficult for the Western devotees to stay here in India. That one friend of mine, after he came back to St. Louis, we're from St. Louis, that he never went back to India again. That was never. He was like, because of the sickness. Eventually, Prabhupada had said that I would not get better as long as I stayed in Bombay. So I had gone about getting the acquired stamps and my passport to leave the country, and still quite ill, undertaken the flight from Bombay to Chicago. My parents have received me at the airport and taken me to their home, where I had lived from the age of 8 until I had left for the college. A day or two after I arrived, an old family member who was a psychologist paid us a visit. She came in my room and inquired, "Tell me, Glenn, did you feel that your parents didn't love you?" "Which parents?" I asked. "I have passed so many lifetimes, and every lifetime I had different parents." Whatever question she asked, I answered with Krishna conscious philosophy. After some time, she left my room, and I could overhear her speaking with my parents. "I'm sorry," she told them. "I did whatever I could, but I don't think I can help him. My parents," I suddenly realized, had sent her to cure me. Yeah, you can imagine the Western parents of the devotees. They thought that, say like Giriraj Swami. He graduated from Cornell University with honors, and his major was English, and his minor was psychology. So when this lady came in and was trying to use psychological tactics on him, he knew exactly what was going on. One time I remember he was speaking to Amoga Lila, and Amoga Lila was a different kind of a devotee. But one time he told him, he said, "I majored in English, I minored in psychology, and I can definitely tell you that you're completely neurotic," he said to Amoga Lila. But this got so serious, some of the parents, they figured that their children had gone crazy. One day they graduate from the university, and the next day they're dancing on the streets in bed sheets. So they figured they've gone mad. So they hired what they call deprogrammers to try to cure their children from their craziness, right? I can remember one time I was in the temple, in the St. Louis temple, and there were many guests there. And two other devotees, one devotee named Durlabha and Urakram Das. All three of us were going to go to the rock concert and sell books. So we had some tickets. We're going to go inside and speak to the young people and sell them books. So we got down there. We left the temple, actually during the Sunday program, and we were going into the concert. We're walking on the sidewalk. And then all of a sudden, this big car pulls up. It's a Cadillac. Maybe you don't know what a Cadillac is, but a Cadillac is a very big car, fancy car. And 5 men jump out of the car. And one of them grabs Durlabhadarshana, pulls him into the car. And I turned around to speak to the other devotee, Urakram, and he was gone. He ran away. I saw he was, a block away already. So then I thought what to do. And by that time, they had all gotten back into the car, except for one. He was still standing by the passenger side. In America, it's left-hand drive on the sidewalk. So I thought, I'll grab this guy. So just when I was thinking like that, he pulled out from behind a pair of nunchucks. You know what nunchucks are? No? You never watched the, Bruce Lee movie, What's that other guy, Harvey Chan or something? Nunchucks. It's 2 sticks, and in the middle, there's a chain, right? So they swing it like this. And I knew devotees that had nunchucks, but they never really knew how to use them. They were just learning, right? So I thought maybe this guy's just showing the nunchucks, but he don't know how to use them. So I lunged to grab him, and then he went with the nunchucks. And then I thought, well, maybe he does know how to use them. So then what to do? I could see Darshan in the back seat, and one of them had him in a headlock like this. And this guy was about to get in the car and take off, and they'd be gone. So I just began to scream, police, 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 shouting. And because it was a rock concert, and we were actually just opposite the police station, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 2 police cars come. And one police car comes in front of the car, and another police car comes behind the car. And I'm shouting, they're kidnapping this guy. Look, they're kidnapping. And the cops get out of the car, and they draw out their guns, and they put their guns on hey, get out of the car, get out of the car. And they can see, they got the devotee in the headlock. So they get them all out of the car, and I'm saying, yeah, check this guy, he's got nunchucks, look at that. Not only had nunchucks, he also had handcuffs. So the cops are trying to figure it out, and just then, a guy in a suit and a tie comes walking across, he comes up to the car, and he starts talking to the cops. And then he says, we're going to have to go down to the station. So we all go down to the station. Durlabhadarshana, the cops, and these guys are in one room, and we're outside waiting for them. By that time, I called the temple, and I told them what had happened. But after some time, the head cop came out and he said, listen, they got papers on this guy, so we're going to have to let them take him. What they had done was, they went down to the place where Durlabhadarshana was previously staying. He was living in a hippie commune with a bunch of other persons. Some of them became devotees. One of them's name was Radha Kund. They were living in a farm, community farm. So they went to that small town judge, and Durlabhadarshana's father actually was a judge and a very wealthy man, very wealthy man. So they got an order from the judge that because Darshan suffered from hyperglycemia, so that he had to, be admitted in a hospital because of the hyperglycemia. But they just used that to show the cops, and as soon as the cops let him go, they were supposed to go back to that small town and admit him in a hospital, but they crossed the state line and they over into Illinois, and they just started going from motel to motel. And it turns out that the person in the back seat who had Darshan in a headlock was actually his father. So they went to many places, right? And these deprogrammers were trying to convince him to give up chanting. And the more he chanted, the more angry they became, and the more desperate they became. And he was always handcuffed. He was handcuffed to the bed. He was handcuffed to the table. They even handcuffed him to the toilet when he went to the toilet, so he couldn't get away. So Durlabha, later on, he told me, he realized that the more he resisted, the more intense they would become. So what he did was, he started to act like he was deprogrammed. And he would say things against Krishna, and then they realized that, or they thought that now he's deprogrammed. So they called his ex-wife. He was married previously but had been divorced. And they thought they'll put her with him and, he'll be converted. So actually, he told me, I hadn't seen him for many years, but just last year I met him again. He's still a devotee there, Livedarshana. And he told me that the reason that he could escape was because his ex-wife helped him. She convinced them to let them be alone. And as soon as they got alone, then he opened up the window and he jumped out and he escaped. And that time he was in Boston, and he went to the Boston temple. And the devotees got a court order so that that couldn't happen to him again, and he came back to St. Louis. So this was called deprogramming, and the deprogrammers, they would try to convince the devotees not to surrender to Krishna. And many times it didn't work, but sometimes it did work. I had another friend who joined the movement same time I did. I even went to kindergarten with that devotee. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade. He became a devotee. Then I became a devotee. His name was Jagadatta. But after Prabhupada left, his parents, one time he went home for Christmas, and they had a deprogrammer there. And the deprogrammer convinced him to give up Krishna consciousness and become again a Christian, I guess. Became a Christian. So anyway, this was going on back in the early days of our movement. I began to feel uncomfortable at home. So I went to the Chicago temple in Evanston, and then to Los Angeles to recuperate at the temple there. Prabhupada arrived from India soon thereafter, on November 30th. When he asked about my health and my stay in Chicago, I told him how the psychologist had come to cure me. You have been infected Permanently, he said, you can never be cured. Right? So the lady tried to cure him from his Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada said, now you've been infected by Krishna consciousness permanently. You can never be cured. There were even some devotees that, they left the movement after Prabhupada left, and they wanted to try and enjoy again, like they did before. Parties and hanging out and whatever they used to do before. But because they were permanently infected with Krishna consciousness, they couldn't enjoy like before. They couldn't forget Krishna. They couldn't forget that they were in Maya. So they went to one, there was a guy called Lazarus, who was some kind of a psychologist or something. So through some psychological therapy, he was trying to get the devotees to forget Krishna so that they could enjoy material life again. Right? But it doesn't work. Right? Once you become a devotee of Krishna, you're permanently a devotee of Krishna, even though you try to forget Krishna. So that's why Prabhupada told Giriraj Swami, you're permanently infected. As I became well enough, I began to accompany Prabhupada on his morning walks. On one, I asked, we say that Krishna is the original cause of all causes, but some people question, then who's the cause of Krishna? How do we answer them? According to our information, Krishna is the first cause, Prabhupada replied. If you do research and find someone who's the cause of Krishna, we will still worship him, but until then, you should worship Krishna. It was very a prized thing to be on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. There was lots of devotees, but everybody couldn't go on a morning walk. So just certain devotees used to get the opportunity to go on the morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, usually the senior devotees. Of course, Giriraj Swami was a senior devotee then also, and he got on a morning walk. I had one opportunity to go on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. That was in Detroit in 1976. So that time, all the devotees from the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party were going on the morning walk with Srila Prabhupada in Detroit. And we were walking down this path, and there were like forests. It wasn't really like they called it a park. And one devotee told Prabhupada wasn't talking very much, he was just chanting his japa. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram. And one devotee said, Srila Prabhupada, they don't keep this park very nicely. And Prabhupada said, park? This is a jungle. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram. So out of the woods came a deer, small deer, and stood on the path and was staring right at Srila Prabhupada, the deer. And all these devotees, big group of devotees are walking, and Prabhupada's in front, and the deer's like in meditation on Prabhupada, just locked in. And then when Srila Prabhupada got very close, the deer stepped off the path and went into the woods. So one devotee said, I can still remember that devotee, his name was Brahmadas. He was in charge of a bus. And he had a motto, Brahmadas. He was a very outgoing devotee. And he used to say, because devotees will go out and collect funds, sell books, you know, and he used to say that if you're a Brahmin, you have to collect $100 a day. Then you're a Brahmin. But anyway, he said to Srila Prabhupada, when we come here, the deer, they run away. But because you're a pure devotee, they weren't afraid. And Prabhupada, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Rama, Rama. Then after a little while, another deer came out of the forest. And again, stood on the path, looking right at Srila Prabhupada. And was, meditating on Prabhupada. And when the Prabhupada and all the devotees got very close, then the deer stepped off the path and went into the forest. And Prabhupada turned to the devotees and said, maybe you're right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In the talks in LA, Prabhupada often smashed mundane, godless scientists. And he inspired his devotee scientists, Swarup Damodar Das, Dr. Turdam Singh, an organic chemist, to form the Bhakti Vedanta Institute to preach the principles of the Bhagavad-gita in scientific language and establish Krishna as the origin of everything, both matter and spirit. I also became inspired by the idea of scientific preaching. And although I was not qualified like Swarup Damodar, I wanted to participate. One day I approached Prabhupada in his room during his massage and told him I was interested in joining in the scientific preaching. He simply smiled and said, "Your field is psychology." He knew that I had been a psychology major. Still, he said, I could apply that knowledge in the work of the Bhaktivedanta Institute. I said that I had noticed that when he spoke about scientists, he used such words as nonsense, rascals, bluffers, and cheaters, and often said that we should kick them in the face with boots. So I asked whether we should use such language when we preach or meet with the scientists. No, he replied, you should speak like gentlemen. So Prabhupada was teaching everyone how to preach. You should speak like a gentleman. Although he was trying to help the devotees understand the situation by saying rascals, etc., etc. You don't call people rascals on the face. That's not how you preach, right? You try to convince them. And devotees that had scientific backgrounds, they could do that using the language that the scientists use to try to convince them and use their scientific knowledge to show that Krishna is actually the original person. Ete pankta Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the original person. So, how to preach? You have to learn how to preach. from Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes you see on the internet, devotees are saying, oh, the rascal scientists, but that's going to alienate people, right? That preaching is for us to understand, to break out of our awe and reverence of the scientists. But when we actually preach the scientists, we behave like a gentleman to convince them about Krishna's. While I was in Los Angeles, the latest issue of BTG arrived with an article by Vishnu Jana. He had just returned to America after spending months sailing down the Ganges, chanting the holy names, and stopping at towns and villages along her banks to chant, distribute prasadam, and preach Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada appreciated the article entitled, "Someday the tiny soul will want to get out of illusion," and commented, because Vishnu Jan has done so much chanting, he's been able to write nicely. So we never should underestimate the power of chanting, right? It can elevate us to the next level. Chanting Harinam Sankirtan can rise a devotee from the Kanista platform to the Madhya platform. It's so powerful. And we see that example. Before Vishnu Jan Maharaj, he was not writing any articles. But because he had done all this chanting, you know what their program was? How many been to Mayapur? Raghu Tilak, you never went to Mayapur? Then why you're not raising your hand? Huh? Okay. So how many know where the Bhajan Kutir is? Bhajan Kutir? So in the Bhajan Kutir, you saw big set of Gornitai and small set of Gornitai, right? So who can tell me where the big set came from? You put them out of big set of Gornitai. Where'd they come from? Give him the microphone. What's wrong with you?
I heard, but I don't remember now.
Well, I'll tell you. You want to know? Okay.
Yes.
So in 1984, there was a plan. I can remember Bhagavan and Jayapataka Swami were in their room. They were making a plan because in 86, there was going to be the 500th anniversary of the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. So they were making a plan, okay, how to celebrate, right? Bhagavan, that time he was almost like Bhagavan, very big. And Jayapataka Swami, So they were making this plan. And I just happened to be in the room with them, and they were discussing how they were going to send. Bhagavan was talking about halogen lights and this and that. And Jayapataka Swami had some other, and every time Jayapataka Swami would say something, the chipgali, the tick-ticky would go tick-tick. So in Bengal, if you say something and the chipgali goes tick-tick, that's true. That will become true. Remember that. So every time Jayapataka Swami said something, the chipgali go tick-tick. And every time Bhagavan would say something, no chipgali. So after some time, Bhagavan asked Jayapataka Swami, he said, hey, you got these things trained for you or something? So anyway, they came up with the idea that we'll have, and Lokanath Swami was also involved, we'll have a padayatra. And it'll go all over India. Everywhere Lord Chaitanya went, this padayatra will go. And they'll go by bullock cart, right? So there was a devotee named Tattva Darshan. He got the carts together. He got the bulls together. They also had a camel. They had an elephant. And they brought these deities that you see in the Bhajan Kutir from a place called Bankura. Very special. They make deities in Navadvip, but the deities from Bankura are very special. Very beautiful deities. So in 1984, September, it must have been around Radhastami, all devotees from all over India came. There weren't so many devotees in 84. There was, a couple of hundred devotees, but in those days, that was a lot of devotees. I suppose if everybody came today, we'd have 10,000 devotees or something. I remember when they came for Prabhupada's disappearance, right? I used to cook the sabji along with Jalatala for the Prabhupada's disappearance feast, right? And one year we made sukta. Well, the year before that, I cooked with another devotee, and we made eggplant balara. And we probably cooked for 1,000 devotees. Next year, we cooked for 2,000 devotees. And the year that Mataji and myself cooked, we cooked for 5,000 devotees. Sukta. We started at about 5:30 in the morning. It was ready by 1 o'clock for the feast. So gradually things increased, Not now today, devotees, they don't even cook. They hire some cooks, and I think last year there were 15,000, 20,000 devotees that took Srila Prabhupada's disappearance feast. But anyway, there was a good amount of devotees for those days, quite a few. And Gaur-Nitai was installed there in Dwarka, and even the Dwarka Brahmins came for the installation. And then they fed all the Brahmins in Dwarka, prasadam, and the ISKCON paid the money to raise the flag over the Dwarkaji's temple. And they did a huge kirtan in the city of Dwarka. Very big kirtan. Even if you go to Dwarka today, people will remember that kirtan in 1984. So then we marched, the kirtan went out of Dwarka. And I don't know if you've ever been to Dwarka, but after you go outside Dwarka, it's just like a desert. There's nothing practically. And they had this plan that they had their own pots. They had pots that, it took 10 men to lift the pots, right? And they were going to cook and all this. And so when we got out there, it was a grand festival, the Gaur-Nitai deities, same one that are there in Mayapur, were in the cart, grand function. But now the reality struck. All these devotees are here, and they're hungry, and, tomorrow we got to cook for them, and how. But the whole thing changed, because Prabhupada says, I have my plan, you have your plan, but Krishna has his plan. So what actually happened? Those pots never got used. Never got used. What happened is that there would be an advance party which would go to the village, and they would tell the padayatra is coming. And in the last village, they made, cheese sabji and this and that. What is your village going to do for the padayatra? So they would say, oh, well, you can stay in the school and we'll do this and we'll have a reception and we'll bring garlands and this. Okay, that's good. So that's how everywhere. They never cooked anywhere. Everything was arranged from village to village. And the devotees would get up early in the morning and have Mangalarti in front of those deities, Gaur Nitai, and then they would start walking. And they'd walk to the next place, and they had an elephant. They had a camel. They had these bulls that had, you see them in Mayapur, the huge horns, you know? You get those bulls in Saurashtra, huge horns. And they would pull a cart. They had 2 or 3 carts. And they also had dioramas. They had 12 dioramas that was pulled by a tractor. And so they'd come into the village, they'd set up all the dioramas and have the Gaur Nitai in the cart, and they'd have a kirtan, and in the evening, all the village people would come, and they would chant Hare Krishna. Someone would give a lecture, right? In Gujarat, they'd have a Gujarati lecture. When they came to Maharashtra, they had Marathi lecture, right? And it became very famous. It would come in the paper. So the whole village was like waiting for the Padayatra to come. Now when the Padayatra, they went all over Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, they came up through Orissa. After 2 years, in 1986, they arrived in Mayapur for the 500th anniversary of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Jai Nitai Gaur! So, actually, Prabhupada had encouraged this program with Lokanath Swami to do this Padayatra. But when they got there in 1986, they were getting ready to leave to continue the Padayatra. They were going to go back the other way, back to Dwarka. But Jayapataka Swami, he requested Lokanath Swami that these deities are so special, the Gaur Nitai deities. You please leave these deities in Mayapur, because that will always remind us of the 500th year anniversary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. So, very reluctantly, Lokanath Swami agreed to leave the deities in Sridham Mayapur. Very reluctantly. He didn't want to leave those deities, but Jayapataka Swami begged him. And he said, listen, I'll get you another set of deities from Bankura. I'll get another set. You leave these here. So he did. And they're in the Bhajan Kutir. So when you go there, remember that these are the deities that went thousands and thousands of kilometers to come to Mayapur. But there's another set, smaller set. These deities were from the time of Srila Prabhupada, and they were on a boat called the Nitai Padakamala boat. Right? So Vishnu Jan, he took these deities, they were on the boat, and they would float down the Ganga. And they would come to a village. You know, there's thousands of villages in Bengal that are on the Ganga. So they would come, and then the devotees would do kirtan in the village, and they would bring Gaur Nitai off the boat, and people would, chant and dance. And Vishnu Jan Maharaj, even the Muslims were chanting. Even the Muslims were chanting in front of Gaur Nitai. So this was the program of the smaller deities. And they're still there in the Bhajan Kutir, can have their darshan, called the Nitai Padakamala boat. So that kirtan, that regular performance of kirtan in the public, had, Prabhupada said, given Vishnu Jan Maharaj the inspiration to start writing for Back to Godhead magazine. So in the same way, if we want to go to the next level in our devotional service, then all we have to do is stay awake in the Bhagavatam class. Hello? And then go out on Harinam Sankirtan, and we'll go to the next level, just like Vishnujan Maharaj did. So always remember that. Okay? Any questions, comments? Microphone?
Hare Krishna. So, Prabhuji, as you said, Giriraj Maharaj asked Prabhupada, who is the cause of Krishna? Right?
So what?
Who is the cause of Krishna?
Right.
So, my question is, I had been asked that scientists do research on something, so until we don't find the cause behind it, we give the name of God. Right? So, but when we find, like, example, the body made up of cell, or in a minute part, it is made up of matter. So we know that it is made up of matter. So scientists finding from where the matter came from. So until we give it a name of God.
Right.
Right. So I want to know that scientists give it a name of God till we don't find something. So then they will find from where
Not
the
only
matter
we
came
give
from.
it the name of God, we give it the name of Krishna, which means the most attractive person.
Yes, but scientists give the name of God till they
No, they don't, many scientists don't even believe in God. They think that the original source of everything, that they'll reduce it to a point where they'll find out the source. Like they, the building blocks of everything, they call it the atom. So the reduction theory, you go down, smaller, smaller, smaller in the atom. There's a neutron and protons, and they revolve around, right? And they think in that way they'll be able to conceptualize the source of everything. But they can't. Can't really understand it. This table, made up of atoms, right? But those atoms are actually revolving. And the protons and the neutrons are revolving around the nucleus of the atom slowly. So in order for something to move, there has to be space, right? So although this looks solid to us, mostly it's space, because they got to move. If you heat it, then the atoms start moving faster, and due to that friction, fire. So our perception of reality is a very limited thing, right? Therefore, if you can't even perceive the material properly, how you'll perceive God? So, but Prabhupada said that even if Krishna is not God, still we love Krishna. Of course, Krishna is God, right? And therefore we should try to understand that. But what Prabhupada, as far as I understand, he wanted the Bhaktivedanta Institute to engage the scientists using their own language, their own terminology, to come to understand what is God. And that way convince the scientific community. Is that okay? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for sharing such nice realizations. The deity which is in Prabhupada's Samadhi, I heard from someone that you like those deities very much, and
In Prabhupada's Samadhi?
Prabhupada's Brajan Kutir in Mayapur, sorry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even you got a similar set of deities, I heard.
Yeah.
Can you share that story?
Well,
They're in Pune, this,
those deities are in Pune, yeah. Those deities were so attractive. there was an idea to put a set of Gaura-Nitai deities in a bus that was donated by Dr. Narendra Desai, Srinathji. Big bus. And in India, they never had a big bus like that, but he bought a bus, and the idea was to put Gaura-Nitai deities. So those deities were arranged from Navadvip by Bhakti True Swami. But I never felt so attracted by those deities as I did by the ones from Bankura. Because from the Padayatra from 1984, those deities were so beautiful. And in any way, there was a sannyasi, his name was Akshayananda Maharaj, used to be the temple president in Vrindavan. So he had started a Bullock preaching program, and then it was decided by the Juhu management to give him this bus. So in 1981, we did the first Rath Yatra in Bombay. And that Rath Yatra went from Shivaji Park all the way to Girgaon Chowpatty. It was a long route, very long route. And then at Girgaon Chowpatty, there was a huge festival. And afterwards, Akshayananda Maharaj, because we had the Jagannath deities they brought from Puri just for this. Here we don't have Jagannath deities. So what to do with those Jagannath deities? They were thinking. And Akshayananda Maharaj says, I'll put them in the bus. Huge. Now they're in Mirror Road, the Jagannath and Mirror, big one. So he wanted to put them in the back of the bus. So they made all special arrangements to fit Jagannath in the bus, right? And then he started to take that Jagannath bus to other cities and do Rath Yatras. Before they ever had an idea to have a Rath Yatra in Surat, he went to Surat. He went to Pune and took Lord Jagannath and did Rath Yatras. But I always liked the idea of having Gaura-Nitai in the back of the bus. So I got one devotee, and we had a bus. That time we got some smaller buses. I think they were called 809, if I'm not mistaken. Tata started to make a little smaller bus, but it was still, a pretty heavy-duty bus. You could carry at least 1,500 Bhagavad-gitas in. So I went with a devotee called Tatpar Maharaj, who I knew, and we went from Mayapur by bus to Bankura. And we didn't really know where that artist was who makes those deities. But somebody told us, you just go to the only Gaura-Nitai temple and ask in the Gaura-Nitai temple where that artist is. So we went to that temple, we saw these beautiful Gaura-Nitais made out of neem wood, and we said, where is that artist? So it took us some back road in this Bankura, and we found the artist, and we made our order for the Gaura-Nitai deities. And he said, I can't do quickly. First, I have to find out the wood. Then the wood has to be completely dry. Otherwise, cracks will come. It takes about 6 months. So finally, the time came, and he said, deities are ready. And I went there with one driver, and we picked up the Gaura-Nitai deities. And we were coming back from Bankura. That time we didn't go by bus, but we went by a Mercedes van that had driven all the way across Germany, Afghanistan, Pakistan, to India. And we went by that bus. And when we were coming back, I was driving. And it was just before Gaur Purnima. We had the deities in the back. Beautiful deities, beautiful. Now they're in Pune, in the MG Road camp. So I was in those days. this bicycle rickshaws. There were thousands of these bicycle rickshaws. And I was driving, and one of them cut in front of me, and I hit his back wheel and crushed his wheel. So they're all Muslims, right? This guy got off his bicycle, and I know how it works in India. If you stop with an incident like that, they'll just kill you. So I knew I couldn't stop. I had to keep going. Then this rickshawwala, he realized that I wasn't going to stop. So he grabbed onto the window. I had the window down. So there I am driving, and this rickshaw guy, he's hanging on my window, and I'm driving. So what I did was I just put my hand on his chest, and I went. So he was out. And then I just got inside the gates, and by this time the whole bunch, it must have been 100 rickshawwalas came charging. And there was a devotee, I forget his name now, he was in charge of security. And he realized what was happening, so the vehicle just got inside, and he closed the gates. And all the rickshawwalas were outside. And they were shouting, and he was shouting, and everybody was shouting. So by Krishna's grace, we were saved, and Gornitai was saved. So this Gornitai, we put him in the back of the bus, and they traveled all over India. They went up to Badrinath, Kanyakumari, so many places they gave their special darshan to all the people. So it was a very effective program, having, deities in the back of the bus. And there was a regular program for the deities. Devotees would get up, they would have Mangala at 5 o'clock, find some river, somebody where they take bath in the morning, and then after they would have Mangala, we'd open up the back doors, and local people would also come for darshan and Mangala. And after that, devotees would start cutting sabjis and to make a khichdi. That time the Bhagavatam class would go on. We had a full program. And then the deities were being dressed. So after the Bhagavatam class, we'd have darshana of the deities and take prasadam, and then go find a place to do sankirtan. And we had khichdi in the morning, and we had the same khichdi at night. So it was a little austere, but so many people got the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for sharing.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki... Oh, Sundar Chaitanya has a question.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. It was very thrilling to hear about the programmers. Like whenever we go to Mayapur, this very beautiful deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is there in Prabhupada quarter.
Yes, Prabhupada's personal deity of Mahaprabhu.
So that came from, like...
I don't really know, but the way the deity looks, it looks like it came from Bankura. But I'm not sure. That deity's been there since Mayapur. And Prabhupada's personal deity of Lord Chaitanya. It's made out of wood, though. Just like the Neem deities in Pune and in the Bhajan Kutir, they're all made out of neem wood. Because Lord Chaitanya is known as Nimai Pandit. So that deity's in Prabhupada's quarters. It's his personal deity of Mahaprabhu.
And this Panchatattva was there from the time of Prabhupada, smaller one, or only...
No. Only deities that were there at the time of Srila Prabhupada were Radha Madhava this tall and Mahaprabhu. I remember Lokanath Swami was for some time he was the Pujari. He used to help Chinanivas and, do the puja. And those were the only deities in Prabhupada's time. The temple was on the ground floor of the Lotus building. That was the only building. The only other building in Mayapur, practically speaking, was the Yoga Pit temple and this building. Everything else was open fields. So much had changed. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.